Welcome back to the Chase MedSearch Podcast. If you want to understand what it really takes to sell medical devices in New York City, not just survive, but win, today's guest is about as credible as it gets. New York is its own universe. It's dense, it's demanding, it's filled with world-class hospitals, legendary physicians, and no shortage of people who have already seen everything. My guest today, Tyler Nader, didn't just sell in New York, he built dominant businesses there. Over nearly a decade in the city, Tyler helped grow and lead territories across uptown Manhattan, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, from level 1 trauma centers to some of the most prestigious academic institutions in the world. He took a brand new therapy in New York City from zero to nearly $2 million in just 2 years, exceeding quota 11 quarters in a row, while becoming the #1 rep in the country and globally. Today, Tyler leads the Mid-Atlantic region, but has his foundation forged in the hardest market most reps will ever see. This conversation is about New York City, the hospitals, the personalities, the pressure, the pace, and why if you can win here, you can win anywhere. Tyler, welcome to the Chase MedSearch Podcast.
Jordan, thanks so much for having me. That intro was flattering, to say the least. I'm not sure I quite deserve all those accolades. Thanks for having me on, and excited to get down to the nitty gritty with you.
I'm always happy to talk about my favorite city. I love New York. I love going there every chance I get, and it's just a magical city for me, and I think it always will be. For reps who have never sold in New York City, how do you explain it? What immediately feels different the moment you start working there?
I think there's an aura about it. It's probably a touch intimidating at first. I think the first time you get in your car, and our sales reps typically need their car to drive around because they have product with them, and you accidentally drive through Times Square. You look up, you see all the billboards, you see the lights. It's intoxicating in a sense, maybe a bit overwhelming too. But for whatever reason, and it sounds kind of cliche, it's a city that never sleeps, and that's the same in our world too. You have to have that consistent drive because there are 100 other yous that are out there that are going to try to outperform you and work harder than you, and you have to be the one that comes out on top. Otherwise, you won't cut it here. But there really is no place like it, and there isn't a lack of talent, by the way. I appreciate you bringing me on this podcast, but there are plenty of others that probably deserve to do so as well. And again, just kind of happy to be around.
How'd you get to New York? I assume you didn't grow up there.
I didn't. So I grew up in Connecticut originally, went to school down in South Carolina, like just 5 minutes outside of Myrtle Beach. And then I was interviewing for jobs, didn't really know what I wanted to do, didn't know that I wanted to be in med device, and had a friend of a friend who was in med device that brought me in a field ride along in the city, which gave me my original opportunity, which was with J&J at the time. It was DePuy Synthes at the time. They got bought by J&J. Basically stacking trays and screws in a garage in Astoria. So that was my original starting point. I think the salary was so low, I couldn't afford rent because you needed first, last, and a down payment. So they put me up in like a hotel for a month until I could actually afford to pay rent. But that's what brought me into the city originally.
Great story. You really wanted to be there, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean, and you don't really know until you're there, and it, again, super overwhelming, but there's just nothing like it. It's intoxicating, and it's hard to get drawn away from it.
You've covered Manhattan, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens. How does geography alone change the job compared to other markets?
Yeah, I think each of them are their individual pockets, right? And people operate very differently. Manhattan, you look at these giant institutions and they're pretty dominated by that. There are sure some one-off private physicians. As you roll into Brooklyn and Queens, it's a little bit more kind of private physicians, and you're working in very different like geographical bounds. Queens itself is a melting pot, right? Like there's just a lot of different cultures and different types of geographies that you have to deal with within a very small populace or within a very small location, meaning they could all be within 2 miles. You could have completely different types of physicians in the way that people work.
When you say Manhattan, you give us the names of some of those institutions that I bet many of us would have heard of.
Yeah, I think the ones that come to mind are the Columbias, Cornell, Sinai, NYU. Northwell now is making a really dominant push. Like there are some major players there. And I think those are probably the big ones. Some people loop in Monty, even though they're up in the Bronx. Like, there's some really big players.
Even getting from hospital to hospital, how much does logistics shape your day, or thinking about logistics?
It's the first thing that I teach reps when I bring them on now is they have to learn logistics before they even think about learning the product. Spoke about it a second ago, but you pretty much have to drive everywhere because you have product with you. So trains are out. Actually, I have a really funny story. It was UN week about 3 or 4 years ago. And I had a case on 42nd and Madison, and I had to get over to 76th and 2nd, which is Sloan. You would think that'd be pretty easy. You take your car, it's 15 minutes. But being that it was UN week, I got stuck behind the presidential motorcade. So I was stuck. Sitting there for about an hour, called the physician. He's like, listen, patient's about to go on the table. I need you here. So took my car, basically drove it off to the side of the road, parked it illegally, got on a city bike, threw my roller bag that I had over my back, like strapped it to myself, city bike to the case, made it there on time. We got the case to go. And then obviously came back later that night. My car was gone. It was towed to who knows where. It doesn't really matter. The case went successfully. But the point is, logistically, New York City is a nightmare. You could be 1 mile away and still be 2 hours away. You have to understand like the traffic patterns, which sounds crazy. You have to understand when rush hour is, who's going where, when somebody important is in town. So you have to understand the logistics before you can really do anything else there.
That sounds like a scene out of the movie Spider-Man or something. You're
It
just
was
doing
great.
it.
I wish I had his powers at that time. It would have been a lot easier.
Absolutely. Excuse me. New York has, as we mentioned, some of the most prestigious institutions in the world. How does that history and reputation affect how physicians listen to you as a medical rep or don't listen to you?
Yeah, I think you have to be extremely well prepared when talking to any physician in New York. There's a reason that they're there and they're at some of these major institutions, and they've kind of really cemented their not legacy, but just their credibility within what they do. And you better be credible on the back end. And I always tell my reps, you have to be a clinical expert before you can get out and sell. And it's not just in the therapy that you're offering. It needs to also be in whatever else that they offer. So if you're working with a surgeon, you need to understand the other surgeries they can offer. If you're working with another physician, you need to understand what else is in their bag. Because sometimes the most credible thing you can do and the way you can kind of win a physician over is say, hey, my therapy is actually not appropriate for you. But maybe there's an alternate therapy that might work better. Have you heard of this? Right? And that really gives you a step above where you bring actual value. You're not just pushing your product, but you're helping them reshape the way that they think, or at least challenging them in their thoughts in a very educational manner and data-driven way.
Yeah, that's a fantastic way to sell, and I hope everybody took some notes out there on that, because building credibility with doctors doesn't always mean pushing your product on them. That's a great example. What does it mean to walk into a place like a level 1 trauma center or a major academic hospital in New York City as a rep? Take us through that, because you're introducing reps, some of them for the first time, to these kinds of situations.
Yeah, I think there's a couple pieces to that. Like, one, the logistical piece in navigating these major institutions is difficult. I think just getting around and getting through the hospitals and trying to understand where you need to go is probably the first piece to that. And then you need to remember that you're a direct reflection of the care continuum and the care team. And people have very high expectations with these major institutions, especially the people that are going to them, right? They're often flying in from across the country and they need great care, and just as everybody else does, but you really need to pay attention to detail. And we spoke about it a touch earlier. There are 100 other of you, and if you don't provide that proper care, the physicians will move on. They expect really big things. New York people are very blunt. They will tell you how they feel, and they will tell it like it is, and you need to be prepared for that, but you also need to be prepared to push back. But just you need to be ready, because the next person will step up, and you don't want that taken from you.
I think that's a stereotype of New Yorkers, is that they are blunt and direct, but I think it also, like every stereotype, probably has a little grain of truth to it. What's the most blunt comment you've ever been on the receiving end from a doctor?
Oh God.
One that just jumps to mind.
That's really good. I've had the whole gambit thrown at me. I've been kicked out of ORs. I've been thrown out of rooms. I've been told to just get away and never come back. So I don't know if there's anything specific that runs to my mind. There was one, there is one hospital system that they were just like, it was one of the physicians there. He told me that I could never come back. And eventually we worked our way through. And it was more of just a miscommunication than anything else. But like you said, they're very blunt and will not tell you, or not afraid to tell you when you're wrong, or at least if they think you're wrong.
Mm-hmm. How much do politics, hierarchy, training pedigree show up in these institutions, especially in Manhattan?
I think, especially in Manhattan, this is probably what makes New York very unique when you're selling to an institutional base. Politics play a huge part, and they're kind of hush hush in a sense, where you have to uncover them and you have to start to talk to people to understand who can offer what and who's allowed to do this and who is not. If you step on the wrong toes, you will shoot yourself in the foot. Like, if I can give any advice to new reps coming to New York, understand the politics and learn the game before you start to really get out there, because there's so much influence running behind the scenes that if you do the wrong thing, you could really shoot yourself in the foot for moving forward.
I'm going to make an observation as a recruiter that I've noticed over the years is that New York City hiring managers, far and above, are ones that are way more willing to hire people that are not from New York City. I have placed people from Ohio and many other places in New York City that don't know really how to get from, I don't know, Broadway to 42nd Street or whatever. Why do you think that is, that New York City managers are way more open and way more willing? Because there's markets like Houston and Nashville and other places that are just not as open to foreigners, if you will, to their city.
Yeah, I mean, New York City is the land of opportunity, right? It is the home of the transplants. We bring people in and we teach them our way, and either they adapt or they don't. There's nothing better than a guy with a Texas accent that can come in and run an OR room like he's a true New Yorker, right? And start to boss people around a little bit. And that's great. We love that. So I don't think it's a matter of where you came from, but if you can adapt to the New York lifestyle, then you're in the right place, and we'll welcome you with open arms.
You've sold into public hospitals, private systems, academic centers. Give us a little bit of a delineation of how those conversations go and maybe some differences between them in New York versus anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely rely on my current experience in the private systems. They're a bit more accessible, right? You can get in, you can potentially negotiate a contract with an ASC on the exact same day, meet with the procurement team there. You have the ability to kind of move things along a bit quicker. And there's some really great private people as well, private physicians that work both in the city, on the island, in the boroughs. On institutional base, the process just sludges along a little bit slower. You're dealing with massive entities that are contracting either through GPOs or IDNs to put a product essentially on the shelf. That process just takes a really long time. That being said, like, both groups are great physicians. I think you need to approach all of them. It's just a very different process. So you have to have a little bit of both if you want some short-term and long-term gain.
You sometimes hear it said that New York doctors think they don't need you. Why do they ultimately choose to work with you in your experience?
Yeah, I think you're right. They probably don't need me. And there's a lot of us that they don't need. Our job is to provide value to them, and they need to be able to understand where that value comes from. I'll give you a really good example. In my current job, I'm walking into physician offices. They treat patients currently with essentially injections or an ablation, which can be a returning annuity for them. They see that patient every 6 months to a year. That patient comes in, and practices are built off that. I'm walking in and telling the physician, no, I want you to do my implant instead. You're going to do it once. You're going to get paid okay, not nearly as much as you would for returning annuity over time. And that patient's going to be fixed and never come back and see you again, right? It's a horrible business proposition. It's about the worst business proposition you could think of until you start to look back and say, wait, what does one really good patient do for me? That patient goes out and talks to their friends, to their family, to where they go to church. Same thing as those numbers continue to populate more and more, you get to see that more and more. So you are bringing value, and there's intrinsic value there that you have to be able to highlight to them. It's just it's very interesting. You have to be able to do that for them kind of over time.
Yeah. What's harder, launching something new in New York City or defending share in a competitive space?
I think there's two sides to it. I'm a bit biased. I think the new launch is probably a little bit more difficult. And I think the real reason behind that is New York physicians they question everything, and rightfully so. A lot of them have a lot of this kind of legacy, like we talked about, that was built up. And they want to protect what they've built, and they want to make sure that they're adopting the right therapies. It's been really nice. And I suggest any rep that joins any new company, they really look at the data critically and ensure that what they're backing, they truly believe in. So that's something that's super important, and you have to be able to bring some credibility to the table. But that part has been, I think building that has been really difficult. It just takes time and effort and spreading awareness around it. On the flip side, I think that job's also really hard too, because even though New York is massive, you have a very limited geographic build. And like I said before, there's 100 of you to 100 of them to one of you, and you're selling against every single one of them. So losing market share can happen very quickly because there's just not enough of you out there, and you really need to fight back against them and push as hard as you can. But there'll always be enough for everybody. It's just how much do you want and how much can you actually gain?
You're a hiring manager now. Pull the curtain back a little bit and take us inside your thought process when you're evaluating talent. Let's say two different kinds of people, the experienced rep in New York or someone that's going to be a build. You're going to have to coach and mentor and develop them. What are you looking for in those two types of hire?
Yeah. So my mindset has shifted, and mind you, I'm relatively new in this role, so I'm still figuring a lot of it out. But I've noticed that the relationship game isn't something that I hire for anymore. I used to hire and think, if you have great relationships, this will translate over to any position that we bring you to. It's less on that, and it's more how people actually build accounts, how they build access within them, understanding how their relationship is not only with the physician, but also the front desk, the person that's answering the phone calls, the NP, the PA. Getting a true sense of how this person built this business is probably the most important for me. If I can see that they've taken something from scratch and built that up, I think that's a great person to bring on the team. Somebody who's walked into an opportunity and done a good job kind of farming or growing is probably great, but maybe not for a startup type of business, or for kind of those bigger fledged places. And then as far as a new person, I'm really looking for adaptability and flexibility. I want to challenge them a little bit, be even not mean in a sense, but definitely kind of challenge their ego and see what happens. I want to see how they react. And if there is that kind of harsh comeback, or they're willing to roll with the punches and take that, because that's what New York City is going to offer. You're going to get slapped a few times, and that's okay. But you have to push forward from that and come back stronger. And if you can do that, then you can be successful here. So that's always my hope with anybody new coming out. I really try to challenge them and see just how they're going to react over time.
Yeah. You've personally handled contracts, referrals, referral building and development. When you hear your peers on conference calls or meet them at national sales meetings or just kind of have informal conversations, what do you tend to notice that's different or maybe grittier about the New York situation versus other markets around the country?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Again, kind of goes back to how many other reps are around and trying to build a business, and you have to make yourself a value and make yourself unique. And if that means doing some of the coordinating or anything that is going to help add value to any of the offices that you're working with, you have to be able to take those leaps and do that. And that goes back to that clinical mastery and being able to understand a scope inside and outside of what you're doing, because it is so densely populated and there's so many people in and around New York that have the opportunity to do what you're doing, and you have to excel and be able to be that person.
Yeah. We were on vacation once with the kids in Michigan, and I was trying to help them understand there's 9 million people that live in Michigan. There's around 10 million people that live in the New York City metro area.
It's crazy.
And trying to wrap our minds around that was talking about density. That's insane.
Yeah.
Um, there's a grind in New York, but also something really intoxicating about it. What keeps you personally motivated day after day, and what does a day in the life of Tyler Nader look like?
Yeah, I mean, my days have changed. I'll bring you back a little to the early days, and maybe where I was a little bit more fun. I'm a little bit more relaxed now, and just kind of hang out. I think motivating in the beginning was you get a little sense for making a little bit of money and getting to hang out and go out with friends, and you stay out late and you have a great time. That really, like, you almost work for the weekends. You work really hard on the weekdays, and then work for the weekends. Life has obviously shifted for me now. I have a wife. I've got a kid. He's now 8 months old at home, which is awesome. So my priorities have shifted. I don't spend as much time as I used to in the city. I think when I was building a business originally, probably did dinner 4 to 5 nights a week. I found it extremely impactful to get people out of the office, get them together, and what a better place to do it than New York City. We've tried basically everywhere, and it's awesome and amazing. But yeah, I think my life has changed a bit from where it was, but it's an exciting change and things are moving in a fun direction.
One of the things I love about medical reps is when I'm traveling, I'll call them and ask them, where should I eat? What is there to do? I mean, they're always, they always indulge me and tell me, because I know that they do that for a living. How do
Yeah.
you stay up on things in a city that never sleeps, is world-class in entertainment, in hospitality and restaurants and all that stuff? And you're probably one of those people doctors expect to know these things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll give credit a lot to my team. I
Okay.
have an awesome team around me. I was at one point fun and young, and we were out, and I knew exactly where the hot spot was. Nowadays, I have no idea. I have a great team that really understands this. I have a rep that's in New York City now, and she's incredible and like just gets the understanding. And you're right, there's an added service burden that in New York City you kind of have to offer, and it's not tit for tat, but it's,
Mhm.
hey, we're gonna go out, we're gonna talk about reactivate, but we need to go sit somewhere nice and go do that, right? And you have to be able to add some of that value there. So it's just a piece of the business, obviously staying within meal limits and all the rest of it, but it's something that you got to do.
Is there a moment you can think of in your career when everything kind of crystallized for you and you realized, I belong here, I can win in this city?
I think I actually had the opposite moment before I had this moment. I had a little bit of imposter syndrome. So after I got that job at J&J Synthes in the beginning, I was in a garage stacking trays and screws, begging the reps that would come in to come pick up the trays to let me out on a field ride with them. Finally
Mhm.
got somebody to bring me out. Went to one of the hospitals in the Bronx, a small hospital. I think it was Lincoln at the time before they got bought by Columbia. Got out there, everything went great. Finally got offered an associate position. Took an associate position. I was jumping between two level one trauma centers. I was 21, maybe 22 years old at the time. Everything was going great. I was learning under two great reps. One of the reps quit. He decided to leave. He moved to Hawaii. He's actually doing really great now. He's still with J&J. I didn't even think about taking the job. The physicians that I work with were like, no, Tyler needs to take this. He does a really great job covering our cases. We'd love for him to be the TM at this level one trauma center. This is New York Presbyterian Queens, which is level one at the time. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I got the job, and I felt very much like I didn't belong, right? I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing. You figure it out. With that job, and I was very young, so seniority definitely plays ranks in an ortho trauma job. I worked 24/7, 365 for about a year and a half straight. Didn't take a single day off, including holidays, Christmas, my birthday, any of that, like nothing. And that's really when I felt like, okay, you know what? I can do this. I do belong here. I can make it here. I moved on, obviously, since that trauma job, and found, some would call it brighter pastures. I really loved that job, to be honest with you. If it wasn't for the time commitment, I'd probably do that forever. But that was probably my sense of, okay, you know what? I can do this. I probably do belong here. But I felt a bit of imposter syndrome before that, because I didn't really know what I was doing.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
And, there's just no substitute for hard work, right? You
Hmm.
get to that point, you reach that inflection, and you're like, yeah, I belong. Um, okay. So what would you say is something that reps in other markets romanticize about New York, but they don't fully understand? What are common things you hear people kind of assume about your city?
Yeah, I
And
hear it more from leadership than I think from reps themselves. But you assume there's just endless opportunity within New York. And I think those political bounds probably actually separate that a little bit. There's definitely opportunity here, but I always hear New York's the biggest market in the world. Like it should be this massive market. And a lot of times it is. But a lot of times you run into these politics where it's a very tight knit community, and either one person doesn't like another, or one facility won't interact with another, or a different divisions are not allowed to interact with each other. So sometimes it does segment that out, and that goes back to the politics and understanding, hey, here's where you can and here's where you cannot. But I think that's probably the biggest thing. Like maybe Boston has a relatively similar market to that. I can't really think of anywhere else that has something similar where it's just you feel like there's endless opportunity, and there probably is a good amount of opportunity, but sometimes it's a touch less than you think.
yeah, the thing I always hear about Boston is it's so heavy academic, it's going to move slow.
Yeah, those academias, man, they take forever. They have some really great physicians, don't get me
Mhm.
wrong, but they just move slow.
I'm going to ask you a question that you probably get a lot based on where you live is if someone from another market in the country, a young rep just getting started out, said they wanted to move to New York, what would you encourage them with and what would you warn them about?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think I would encourage them, one, specifically to move within the city limits. People love to come and work in New York and live out in Jersey or live somewhere separate. Is it doable? Yes. But it gets very demanding and very tough. Getting across a tunnel or a bridge can take forever, and they shut down. And especially if you're in a job like an ortho trauma where they need you on site ASAP, you definitely want to be in and around where your business is. As far as the job itself, I would be prepared to work probably a bit harder. It's just the ethic that people have here, the work ethic, and you're not really going to get physicians to adopt you without a little bit extra kind of nitty gritty and really getting tough and getting down to the bottom of it. That being said, I would encourage anyone to give it a go in New York. I think it's a great place to launch. I think if you can make it in New York, you can kind of make it anywhere. It really is true. And again, it sounds kind of almost insincere in a sense, but it is so true. Like if you can make it here, you can truly make it anywhere. And that's not a brag on myself, but like that is truly how a New York rep is built.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you've been extremely generous with your time. So I've got one last question for you,
Sure.
which is how much would you credit the city with shaping who you are professionally at this point?
I mean, I'd have to give a lot of credit. I think I've also had some really great mentors and
Mhm.
leaders throughout that I give all the credit in the world to them. I think the city has probably shaped my brain in ways that I don't even know. Logistically, getting everything like just even just on a day-to-day basis of figuring out where to go and what to do with your life. I think the
Mhm.
city's also really challenged me, and the city being the physicians within the city, they challenge me to be a better person and understand more about what I'm doing. They almost want you to be successful. That's the one thing I really like about New York and the physicians. They want to see you be successful and they want to help drive you, but they're not going to make it easy. It's almost like you're going to school again every single time you see them. They're going to challenge you. They're going to continue to keep you on your toes and make sure that you're up to date on everything. And if they can see that, they'll help you succeed. Like they'll help push you to where you want to go.
Could you imagine living, working anywhere else?
I don't know. I don't think so. Maybe at some point when I get much older and I want a little bit slower of a pace.
Mhm.
But there's really nothing like it here, and I don't think I trade it for anything.
You're not ready to pack it up and go to Florida yet, like a lot of.
Depends, maybe. You never know.
Yeah.
That being said, the, you you create some amazing relationships, right, in what you
Yeah.
do, and just really happy in where I am. So I doubt it, but who knows? You never know what the future holds.
Well, we'll be tracking your future here, Tyler, at the Chase MedSearch organization. We'll keep an eye on you and all your success, and congratulations on that. And thanks for being on.
It was my pleasure. Thank you, Jordan, for having me. Again, this is an awesome opportunity. I love what you are doing and what you are building. I think it's an amazing resource for people. So I really appreciate you, and thanks again for having me on.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you.